Vyky Saiz. I'm one of the co-founders of 100 Voices of Florida, and today I have the honor of sitting down with Lucky Twins. They are the winners of our 2025 season. And this year's winning script is Las Niñas con las Niñas. It's a tender and powerful story based on real experiences of childhood. It explores belonging and identity and the pressures of growing up, especially as a girl. We're going to dive into the inspiration behind the story, the creative process, and the themes that make it resonate with not only Floridians or just, those in the United States. It extends way beyond that, as we're going to get into the story as well of the creators themselves. So please, if you both can individually take a moment to introduce yourselves, and let's start with you, Majo.
Majo here, Majo, my full name Maria Jose Noriega, the good twin. Don't get my twin get you fooled. She's the evil one. But I'm a director, writer of Las Niñas con las Niñas, and just grateful and excited to be here.
Thank you.
And I am Karla Noriega, also twin. And I am also a director. I'm also writer and sometimes producer as well. And I am co-writer. I don't appear in the script, but I gave my sister a story, and then she came out like 6 months later, like, "Hey, look at the story I wrote." And I'm like, that's why we kind of always title, Lucky Twins, because somehow we always kind of like giving us telepathy into the stories and, bringing ideas together. So I'm also co-writer of this story.
That sounds cool. And to kind of start with that, with the Lucky Twins, how did that sort of come to be? Obviously, you are twins, but just sort of the name and kind of using that as a brand. Whose idea was that first? And was it kind of a joke and then it stuck, or was it very intentional from the beginning?
Okay, so it was very intentional. The thing is, growing up as a red hair in Mexico, which is not very common apparently, when we were in like elementary school, we get like everybody will come to us and like, please pinch us, like pinch us. It's supposed to be like a good luck omen. So we will like pinch everybody. At some point we have to pinch so many people that like we will do it like with malice, like but like everybody was saying like, oh yeah, you're the lucky twins. So we pinch our way through until one day we were like, we need a name for us being a duo and us like whatever we do, as a creators. And it was just like Lucky Twins. It's just really like that little background, but it really also came out of a moment of spontaneity, and since then it just stayed basically. But yeah, we had to pinch a lot of people to get there.
So other people kind of have sort of started that growing up, the Lucky Twins, and then you just kind of sort of took it upon yourselves to be like, yeah, we are the Lucky Twins, actually.
Yeah.
I will say it did not happen consciously. I don't remember the moment when we decided to call us the Lucky Twins. It's like an accent in both of our heads, and we're two. It just happened, Lucky Twins. And then going back, that's where we realized, oh, that's actually where it comes from. So apparently being redhead, it's, and being pinched by someone gives you luck. So next time I see you, Vyky, I'm going to pinch you. We both will do if you want.
That sounds good. Everybody can use a little bit of luck, so I'm not mad about that. And, that's kind of something else to highlight, so we're going to get into how Majo is in Gainesville, Florida, which is a very interesting choice, and I'd love to sort of ask about that. But first, Karla, so where are you right now?
It's funny that you asked. I actually live in Delray Beach, Florida. I'll start with the first half of how we ended up in Florida, but I'm in Mexico right now. I'm currently in my hometown in Mexico. I came for some business that I have to do here. But it's funny because we were talking this morning with some producers and we were telling them we don't live in LA, we don't live in New York, because we love Florida. We happened to get a scholarship, as a matter of fact, as Mexicans to study film. And we went to Miami-Dade College, phenomenal school. And then after that, we met our wives and we ended up staying. It wasn't really like planned.
Mhm.
And then we decided we want to stay because the pandemic hit, and then that we start being able to, you know, travel and shoot things, and also like it's close to Mexico, so it kind of worked out in a wonderful way. And also, we think Florida is paradise. Every time everybody's like, "Why Florida?" I'm like, "Because it's paradise."
I really am excited to hear you say that because, I mean, I was born and raised in Florida, and, it's kind of one of those things with anything in life. I mean, you take advantage of it, when you have such access to sort of what's around you, even if that access is beautiful and paradise, as you say. So, that was kind of one of the motivations, just to kind of bring a little bit more recognition to Florida. Whether you were born here or not doesn't even really matter. Something is drawing you here, or something drew your family here. And how can we sort of highlight it? Of course, we're doing it through storytelling and film and stuff like that, but it really does stem from an appreciation for being able to call Florida my home, So it's great that, you had that opportunity to come here, by the way, especially with NBC. I looked into actually their film program, so I'm glad to have heard great things about it. But yeah, so I can go on a tangent about Florida. So it's nice to, hopefully other Floridians will hear this and kind of remember, look left and right because we live in a great place, And so Maho, Gainesville, I'm familiar with Gainesville. Kind of those in Florida are likely familiar with Gainesville primarily because of probably the University of Florida, UF. But it's an interesting choice, kind of pick that spot and settle there. So for those who maybe don't know or not as familiar with Florida, kind of tell us a little bit about it and maybe why you settled there, at least for now.
I will say I just fell in love with Gainesville. I was living in Miami. As my sister mentioned, we got our scholarship. So basically, Florida opened the door for us. Miami was like, "Come here, twins. I have opportunity for you," and embrace us with humility and you know all of the things that comes along with Florida. But we loved it. And then I started traveling. I went back to Mexico. I was like in India, and then I was in New York for a little while, and then just wanted to come back to Florida, and I came back to Miami. But we, for some reason, my wife and I kept going to the springs. Like we just really fell in love with the nature, with springs, with the spiritual community that it's here. It's just like it's a very random town to be, but there's such a like the creative community, the people. There's no traffic. That's also like a huge incentive. Um, I would say I just really fell in love with the nature, with the people, with the community in here. It is such a random spot, but it's also nice to, you know, oftentimes in this career you have to be in bigger, busier streets, sorry, cities. But being here in Gainesville is kind of like coming back to like this little like nest where you can kind of like decompress and have your nervous system heal and just be in contact with nature and with yourself. So I would say Gainesville chose me more because I really never expected to move here, but I'm very happy actually.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about a bit because I'm from Broward County, so went to all through school there, came back after undergrad, was a teacher there, and even though it definitely had its flaws, especially just from how being busy it is, I mean, between Broward County, Dade County, Palm Beach County, I mean, it's just a lot of people, and it has a lot to offer. And I didn't really leave until I got accepted into film school at Florida State University a few years ago. But it wasn't until you kind of pop that bubble that you're like, oh my God, why why haven't I left sooner? Like it's still home. It still has many amazing things, but kind of like what you mentioned, just kind of finding your peace just somewhere else. And it's always there if you need to go back for any reason. So, and I'm currently in Tallahassee again, but I have family, and my partner is in Gainesville, so I'm there often. I can see what you mean about just, kind of coming back to nature. And if you do have that, spiritual side as well, it's a very open-minded place, kind of despite certain things you hear. So I'm great to hear that you're having a lovely time there as well. And then not too far, from your sister. So kind of, even though you're both in the state, you're still sort of at a distance with each other. So, a mixture of how is it working just in general as sisters and then also with the distance.
Let me answer this. First, I have to say I live in Palm Beach County and the rate doesn't feel as crowded. I love it. And the crystal clear blue beaches that you can go disconnect it's just gorgeous. I feel in paradise. But second, and going to your question, is we don't miss each other because we literally talk to each other every single day, whether to be phone or call. And also because we're just 4 hours away, we visit each other quite often. So yeah, I mean I think it kind of helps sometimes the distance because I get to concentrate sometimes and she gets to concentrate on her things. And then whenever we're ready to connect when we're working on a script, we always working on a script. We have two features that, she's in charge of one, I'm in charge of another one, feature films. We also have short films. We're constantly just creating, but it kind of helps, like that we're not glued together physically all the time. So that way it's like, okay, let me reconnect. But as I say before, we literally speak every single day. So we don't miss each other.
So have you, when you were in, well, actually first, speaking of Del Rey, does that mean you've been to Garlic Fest?
What is that? I never heard of such a thing before.
I
Garlic.
Yeah,
Garlic.
I don't know if they still do it. So it's been a few years. I don't know if they've, because things change with COVID, and then I don't know if all of the same events still happen all the time. But you should check it out, Garlic Fest, if they still have it in Del Rey. It was a very famous annual festival, for those, that love garlic. They had sort of every meal option, the garlic version. So, I won't interrupt this conversation too much with that, but check it out. It's always kind of something fun to do. And hopefully they still have it because it was an interesting event, especially if you love garlic. They used to call it like the best stinking event in town or something like that. So,
You better bring mint with you. Oh my God, I didn't know, but I'm definitely gonna check it out.
I
Again, I'm
love
gonna let you
garlic,
know.
so I'm coming for more garlic.
oh man. Okay. So I interrupted myself. You talk all the time, so you kind of don't, it's good to have that separation. When you were both in film school together, were you then sort of like living together, kind of working together in that sort of aspect, or even then, did you kind of keep a separate space?
We were glued to each other. We even shared wallet, debit card, phone. We had a friend do an intervention, a friend from Venezuela, and be like, the two of we were also kind of like in the closet back then. So it was just, yeah, we're very enmeshed, let's put it that way. But we've come a long ways, and yeah, but we always been extremely close. Basically, she's my best friend, and I'm very grateful to have a twin. Like I know a lot of people always says like it's a challenge, it's fun, and I would say it's probably the best gift of my life to have a twin sister. Even though sometimes we're like, hey! We always come back to love. We love each other.
So then what is your goals? Like, do you individually sort of have goals and then also goals as a creative team? Do you ever kind of find those two kind of at odds, with something that you're trying to accomplish for yourself, or have things so
Hmm.
far kind of been able to work together, or you just kind of find that balance? Like I'm thinking about how it was just mentioned, kind of one person's in charge of a feature, the other one's in charge of the other feature, but is there anything sort of else that can sometimes, maybe get in the way of what something you're trying to accomplish creatively?
I will say, Vicky, no, we do have the same goals. That's why we have been able to make such a great team. Because when we set a goal, we divide and conquer. So let's say Majo's working on she's doing some retouch of a feature film that we also want to shoot next year. And we've been working for a little while, but while she's finishing that, Karla is also developing another feature film, right? And that way, we might have different tasks because it works out that way, but we always have the same goal. I don't think we'll be able to be, business partners and directors duo if we have different goals. So everything is, we get together several times a week to like refresh the goals. How are we doing tracking tasks? What are we doing? What do we need to do? So definitely
Motivate each other sometimes.
sometimes to vent with each other, sometimes to but even when we were in school, in film school, Vicky, we were like same class, say everything. Like we will, like teachers know us together because wherever one will go, the other one will follow. So no, we are extremely aligned in our goals. I would say we have almost exact same goals. So that's what I'm saying. We are like we telepathically communicate. So sometimes it's funny. Sometimes it happens that I'm writing a shot list, and one day she had to write the same shot list for some reason. And we came with literally almost the same shots. It was like, do you wrote this too? Yes. Do you did this too? Yeah. So, I mean, it also has things take time for us to develop a system where we both don't, step on each other. Because at first it's like, I want to do it. I want to do it. I want to talk. And now, after a lot of therapy and working on ourselves, definitely we're being able to accomplish a system where we both feel heard and where we both feel we're happy working together. It took time. It took a few years, but we have definitely like mastered it at this point. And we do have the same goals, but because we have been able to work together.
No, no, that's great. And it's kind of just it's insightful, obviously you happen to have a built-in creative duo in the sense of, especially because you're sisters and all that stuff, but that's kind of the thing with businesses in general, especially, creative projects, it's always good to have that partner, and that's kind of hard for a lot of people to find, is to kind of find that person that is equally committed to the art is the first thing. And then secondly, either have the same goals as you, that's where you can have like a director producer duo, or have, an understanding of, we'll just try to balance this out. Like, this is who we have, we only have each other. So let's sort of see, maybe I can do your film and then you can do my film and stuff like that. So that's such a key aspect of kind of staying on task, of pursuing constant creativity. Now, you mentioned having the same goals. So does that mean, now when it comes to, let's say, personality or sort of interests, does it kind of flow easily in that, one likes to kind of do these things and the other one kind of prefers to do these things? Or did you find that you both were kind of similar? So then that's kind of where the figuring out was really necessary. Because if we both want to do the shot list, well, then, that's kind of, that's where people can get kind of caught up, or do you have like a yin and yang that kind of works out?
we I would say personalities, we're very different in the sense that I am more of like the dreamer, and my sister's more of like the, okay, now let's bring it back to, for example, when we came to when our dream was to study film and become directors. I was like, we're gonna go to United States, because for some reason in our heads United States is like, we grew up with American films. It was like, we have to go there. And I was a dreamer. I'm like, we're gonna go and we're gonna find a way. And we actually found like a au pair program. We came first as a nannies, and I was clear on the intention that we're gonna become filmmakers. But we were getting paid like $100 a month or something like that. And the film schools were like, we were looking at schools in like, LA. We really wanted to go there, and all of these schools that looked amazing. But the tuition was like $500,000 a year, things like that. And I was like, I don't know how, but we're gonna do it. And my sister was like, I think we should start looking for a scholarship. And I'm like, maybe you're right. So that's how we found, the scholarship in Florida. And so basically she's more of like, I am like, we're gonna do this. Like I dream, and then my sister's more like, okay, but let's figure out a realistic way to do it. So like I feel like in that sense we're very yin and yang. But in when we direct together, what we do is we basically like, depending on the project and whoever wrote it, or whoever feels more called, like one will be kind of like the lead and the other one will support her. So for example, with Las Niñas, I will probably sit down and do the shot list, but I will also sit down with my sister. Like I will bring a base and we will bounce ideas back and forth. And that's, I would say, easy in the sense that we've done it since we were little kids. We will like sit down in front of the TV with an open book, and I'll start drawing something, and my sister will come and draw something else, and then she will come and like, and we will create stories through like drawing like things, or just with like little toys. We'll never play with Barbies, of course. It was more like Max Steels and stuff, and we create like scenes and moments, but like cooperating with each other. One will be kind of like the lead voice for a particular story, and then the other one will kind of like bring perspective and feedback. And it's a very, I would say, very, very dynamic, very egoless way to create that, that, yeah, it's a synergy that we have and that we're grateful for. It's a lot of fun. I would say it's a lot of fun.
So since you are such a tight unit, have you ever, let's say if you're on set or something like that, where has anyone ever sort of felt like, man, it's kind of hard to break through to, kind of because like where one goes, the other one goes, and kind of, how someone can, you know, kind of get through, it's kind of like feel like the third wheel of kind of creativity. I'm trying to figure out how to frame my question because it just kind of came to me just now, but I'm just trying to see how that can be such a, or does it just really kind of, I also, I really see it more as like as more of a benefit because it's kind of two minds working towards the same goal. That means that I imagine things are significantly probably more prepared and all of those things that are necessary to really keep the set or the production kind of things running smoothly. But I always think of the other sides of things, if someone could feel like, man, it's kind of hard to break through,
Mhm.
it sometimes it can be hard to break through to one person. How does someone sort of break through to two people? So I just didn't know if y'all have ever had that experience.
Oh, absolutely. I think part of the growing process, it was starting with the short films that we directed when we were in school. Those were full of fights between both of us. And then as we continue to grow, not only as directors, but also as a person, as people, we always want to be a better person. I think that's where the starting to leave the ego out and be more collaborate and understanding when an idea serves the project more, even if I'm the lead of that project, it's like, okay, Karla, shut up and listen to Majo because she has a point. And it happened recently with a character that we were developing, and I'm like, no, the story tells me this. And then after like a week of reflection, I was like, no, maybe like a month. I was like, oh, she got a point. It started as my story. Everything started as one person's story, but then the other one always pops out, like her head pops out. And it's like, let me see these. And then we help each other craft every idea that we direct. Because sometimes, even if one is a lead, the other one always comes with good ideas that support. So I understand what you're saying, and it did happen at the beginning. I will say it's been like a long time ago since that happened, because now we understand that our egos have to stand back in order to be able to give our full best for the project to be the best. And that has helped a lot, to not feel left out, but on the contrary, feeling like I am here to support my sister, even if she's the lead.
But I feel like, adding to what you're saying, Carla, like now with people outside, actually the contrary happens. We for example have one of the projects we're writing right now, we usually have like we have more people involved. Sometimes it's also like to balance the equation a little bit. We tend to be Very inclusive. We don't have a hard time like allowing people. um I feel like we are tied as far as our creative process, but we're not tied in communication, and we're not tied in, including people, making them feel welcome. Obviously, when you're on set, that's, like that's even more so the case. We're all like a team. It's not now like my sister and I might be the captains of the ship, but at the end of the day, like everybody's, like everybody's on the ship, and we all need to like work together. Or let's say a soccer team, we might be the captain of the team or whatever, or the coach, or whatever you want to see it, but at the end of the day, it's like everybody's, job to score the goal. And so yeah, we're very like, I think because of the same reason we become very good like team players. We actually, I love to work with teams. Really kind of like gives me energy, and I just love it. So, but yeah,
I
I would
want to
say open.
quickly add that we have had to develop a system because when we are on, let's say, a little bit of a bigger set, and I remember one project, the first AD will like come, will ask a question to one, and then the other one would not be informed. So it will be a little bit, of like miscommunication and what is happening. So after that, we learn, and then ever since it's like, okay, if I'm the lead, I always communicate with the first AD. The one in red is the one who takes the main decisions. And if I'm gonna make a change, I will consult with her and be in the same team before I change something. So I think it has really helped us elevate our communication skills, because otherwise it was like, who do I go with? And everybody will confuse us on set. So, but now it's we have find a method, to work that out, and it's pretty good.
Yeah, I like the lesson here basically of just sort of, I'm sure at some point, it could have just been easy to just kind of be done with it, kind of have those frustrations, have those miscommunications. And maybe, because of being sisters, you kind of have that sort of built in, sort of, even if you weren't creating, you would probably always still be seeing each other, spending time with each other, all that kind of stuff. But I think whether or not someone is working with family, I think it's important to kind of remember that, I mean, whether it's filmmaking or even more than that, romantic relationships, whatever it is that you kind of have to, that getting over the humps can be possible if you're willing to kind of take a beat, figure out what's going on here, build, design a system. Um, and the word system isn't always sexy or anything like that, but I mean, it sort of is what it is. It's that thing of how do two people come together and sort of make this thing work, because walking away can be too easy sometimes. And especially with creativity and filmmaking, it requires that sort of balance. And I mean, it's always even for the tiniest films, it's always a miracle when a film gets done, just the amount of, conversations that sort of had to happen. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and going back also to what was highlighted about doing what's best for the story. I get asked a lot, from filmmakers kind of starting out, let's say they've never made a film before, and they kind of want, you know, on one hand, they're torn between, wanting, let's say, like a mentorship or advice, which I try to be cautious with, because advice is also opinion, and, it's not always, the only one way to do something. But either way, I kind of generally like to say, oh, do the first one and then come to me at the second one, because usually, when you realize you don't know, you want help, but you're so distracted by everything that you want to do. So then it's like one ear is open and the other one's closed. And I think it's a good to go through that process where, you let the ego ride. Like, use the first film for the ego to ride. If it's great, wonderful. Likely it tends to be a bit of a disaster for different reasons. It's still a success that you finished, because at the second one, then the ears are open. And now it's like, I'm ready to hear, I'm ready to listen, I still have a voice and I still would like to accomplish these things with this story, but now you are able to access that collaborative thing where everybody's sort of doing what's best for the story and you're making decisions for, for these characters, making choices that they would actually make versus choices that you want them to make or different things like that. So I find that to be sort of very interesting and kind of how you both have, just individually kind of gone through that process. And then especially as a team, I mean, it kind of takes it to another level. And one of the things that was mentioned, Karla, you were talking about how, you shared a story and kind of how you were kind of stuck in that it is, your story or something that you experienced. So kind of using that to go to the story now, it's based on a real story, as you've mentioned, and as it says on the title page, I believe. So how did your personal experiences or observations kind of, you know, shape this? And that could be a question for either of you, because I know, kind of, well, actually, before we get into that, who would be considered, I'm going to go with your language, who would be considered the lead on Las Niñas? Is it Majo?
That would be me, yes. Because I sat down and wrote it, yeah.
Okay, okay. So then kind of starting there, then how did you, whether it's just from the story that she told or also your own personal experiences, how did that shape the protagonist's journey?
So basically, as a twin, something very interesting happens where oftentimes we will tell each other stories, and like she would tell me something, and then I would like, for some reason in my head, like I will register as it happens to me. So I feel like part of the story, although it is an experience that happened to me, a lot of the things that happened in the story also happened to my sister. Now, which exactly one is some of the details, like if it happened to my sister or me, I don't need, like, it's just weird. It's like it becomes like, how can I say it? There's just no lines between what was my experience and what was hers. Like I perceive it as mine. Now, what was really my experience was the experience of the teacher, Tomasa, when I was in the patio playing, and then I got approached by one of my classmates was telling me that my teacher wanted to talk to me, Tomasa, and I was the one that experienced being told, not like, you're supposed to be playing with the girls, you're a girl, because I used to hang out with the boys all the time. And I mean, in kindergarten, we basically, the majority of friends were boys as well. We were just playing soccer, doing fun things. But then we got separated once we got into that was the first year of elementary, and we got separated. So I didn't have that moral support of my twin, I would say. And I feel my sister it's more of a person that's always been more like, no, like she's more like of a rebel in that sense. I feel like after that day when I was told, like, you're not supposed to be playing with this, like, because this was an authority figure, I immediately accepted it, and I immediately, like, believe it to be true. I didn't question it. I feel like if I had my twin on my side, this story would have never happened. But yeah, I will say that now, and obviously after my sister read the first draft of the script, is a blend of both experiences. The character of itself happens to be a friend of my sister, actually not my friend. So it's just like a blend of, Rodrigo was with me, Itzel was with my sister, but it's like a combination basically of an experience that we both live, but in one, from the perspective of only one character.
Okay. And now, given that this is, a script, so it won't necessarily be access, to anybody listening, let's sort of back it up a bit. I probably should ask this first because we've kind of hinted a little bit what the story is about, but what would you say the log line for this story is?
The log line is, I
The synopsis or just the summary?
The summary is, no, I love it because I can write 100-page and 100 so pages of a script. And then when they ask me the log line, it's like, ah, but it's always there. Basically, is this young little girl, 6 years old, that she's just being herself, being her most authentic self, uh, playing soccer, climbing trees, and then she gets asked by her teacher. She gets summoned by her teacher, and the teacher asks her not to hang out with the boys, not to play the way boys play, because she's a girl and she's supposed to behave like girls expected to behave. So she goes in this quest to try to fit in. Now she goes into this quest to try to become what, play with the girls and become a proper girl, become accepted basically. And so yeah, and in this process, well, she starts to lose her identity. But that's a little bit of the journey that took many years to come back from, personally.
And is this script is it really intended as to just be a short, kind of just leave it there, or do you see it as like a proof of concept for a feature?
This short film was intended to be a short story, but now that you mention it, I feel like there could definitely be expansive, because the journey is long after you're told that what you are is not what you're supposed to be, and that basically when somebody tells you you are a mistake, and you're like, oh, and then you try to cover that identity and cover the mistake. It's I would say, like, the ripple effects are way more are longer to cover than on a short form and on a script, but the ripple effects are there. And I was just wanted to mention, Vyky, that actually we both of you, Vyky and I, did a screening at Links, and I remember hearing the feedback of some of the people telling me that they felt the short film very personal. And I feel like in that event, when I met you, Vyky, that's when I kind of allow myself permission to write about more personal stories of our lives, because I always felt like I didn't have permission. And I feel like that screening really changed my life and my perception of I can actually talk about things that happened to me, and for some weird, strange way, a lot of people that never experienced that, or that I thought actually are experiencing it. So I will say that I just wanted to mention that I think it's just very magical the way it happens. That event that where we met was kind of like the ignition of this short film.
Yeah. And it's such a, for those that would be listening and they sort of don't know, it's definitely a small world sort of moment of just kind of running, this grant that I'm sort of doing that I love and all that other stuff. And then also as a filmmaker myself, kind of trying to promote and support my own work. And, that's having met you and, seeing what you were sharing, and just as whether it's as women or filmmakers or being gay or whatever, just sort of it was a very great moment for all of those things and more, to kind of be supported by just for your creativity, for just for who you are. And well, another reason why to love Gainesville. kind of brought all this kind of coincidental, moments together, and it was a lovely event. And for anyone, who wants to support the arts or books, or either in Gainesville, or if you're just driving through, that's the Links Books. And it's a beautiful local bookstore that is owned and run by Lauren Groff, I believe is her name, a famous author. And yeah, they do different events around for mostly for books and stuff like that, but they've been expanding, and it's been such a fun ride that they've also expanded to screening films and stuff like that. So hopefully they kind of keep doing that, and we can all sort of keep supporting filmmakers. But yeah, that was a fun time to kind of have that moment. And the film, obviously, that you screened was beautiful, and it was so, you know that kind of, with that film and this script, it's just to kind of share a compliment, to you both about how, you know, it's not just good because it's true, because that's only interesting up until a certain point, you know. The audience has to connect, and you know that was one of the things that was highlighted about from the judges, which is that whether or not they have actually experienced this exact thing, we also have male judges, right? So we're talking about a story about a little girl kind of being told to be like girls, but that it's the way that you both kind of craft it so that even if the audience hasn't experienced that particular thing in that order, in that way, with these teachers and these people or whatever it is, um, that you still can find something to hold on to that kind of feels similar. Because so then it's kind of the emotion is resonating, so then you kind of feel for yourself and you feel for the character, and then you kind of become intrigued to see where this story is going to go. So that's something I just wanted to share in general with
Thank
both of
you,
you.
Vicky.
And but yeah, so that kind of thinking about childhood, and kind of getting into, you mentioned some kind of vivid imagery, and sort of the little details in the script, to kind of signify even like the time period and stuff like that. Were those, would you say that most was just sort of drawn from memory? Did you do any sort of research to think back on sort of the things of that time? I feel like I would have to do that because or at least, get something to be like a domino effect to get me to start thinking about it, or accessing those little details, does that come easy to you, or?
I will say, Vicky, I mean, besides my sister talking about the story and being a personal, like very personal story, I feel like this story was born like years ago. I did was writing the feature film that I'm writing right now. That image came oftentimes. Like I remember coming back and haunting me a little bit. Um, I did not really have to do research in the sense that we experience it. And, every professor, every coach, every mentor, everybody that it's being filmed is always going to tell you when you're starting, right from what you know. I feel like oftentimes we don't give ourselves, or we feel like our lives is not interesting enough to be able to, you know, like, I'm just going to share a little bit moment of my life. This happens to me. Who cares? Why would people care? Um, but I think after years of like that idea cooking in there, that vision cooking there, talking to my sister, after the screening, I just basically sat down. I was in this beautiful Airbnb in North Carolina where like full of art. I think it's important to surround yourself with art, and it doesn't only have to be film. But he was just playing the piano. He's like, it was just like this very Victorian antique place, beautiful. And I remember like I just sat down with and sipped some tea, and I wrote. Actually, it's probably here. I just wrote the idea first. Like I just vomited. I was like, spit everything, and then after that, I typewritten it. I now I'm in the process of when I write a story, a script, even if it's a short feature, I first put it in a typewriter,
Like a traditional typewriter?
a traditional typewriter.
He knows that. I think that's what they said he does. I don't know if he actually does, but okay, that's cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it just like you asked in the past like what's been one of the biggest like if there's a struggle of if there's challenges, obstacles when of having goals or like creating, and I would say one of the biggest, at least for me, is like the imposter syndrome and the critical voice that is always telling you like your work is not good enough. And I feel like putting it on a typewriter allows me to be like I can do I'm going to do mistakes. It's going to be imperfect because I mean I don't have a thing to erase, and the machine doesn't work. Like I mean it's a good typewriter, but it's not obviously perfect. I cannot correct if I want to correct any mistake. I cannot go back. So I think that this idea in particular, coming back to your question, Vicky, was just it was just it was ready to be born. I just spit it out. Obviously, with a lot of a screenplay that we're writing right now about the period of 1912. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's just this dictatorship that happened in Mexico, and this the slavery that happened in the area of Yucatan. And like obviously for that we have to do a lot of research. But when it comes to stories like this that are from the heart and personal, no, sometimes you just have to like spit them out, not overthink it.
Yeah. And I think that that's like, I've never actually, at least I don't think I've ever used an actual typewriter, but I can see the allure to do that because I'll write the whole script even by hand, even if it's a feature. I don't want to touch that digital, like obviously, nothing against the computer or anything like that, but it's just more of I can't, I always tell people that they just need to trick themselves, instead of just wanting to be able to do something you can't do, don't spend too much energy in that, and I just found myself getting stuck at a digital blank page, but when I looked at a notebook, the ideas were coming out. So instead of beating myself up for why can't I get the idea out when I'm typing, who cares? Just get the idea out, as you're saying. And then once it's sort of all done, like that first draft at least, then it's so much more satisfying that I can then transfer that. I prefer to like transfer information
Mm-hmm.
than kind of start there. And then also because you could take a notebook more easily anywhere. You could take it to a park. You could take it to, the mall, or, you don't have to have electricity and all these other things that kind of, or Wi-Fi that can get in the way sometimes. So I think that that's neat. How long have you been doing that for a long time, or is that more of a recent with utilizing the typewriter?
I started a year ago, and at the beginning it was very hunting. Like I think for a month I had the typewriter, and I was like, I'm not doing it. Like I'm just like just like just putting the ink felt like a like a big challenge. But then little by like I just it's little by little, and at the end now I wrote like a whole like 100 pages feature that already kind of like transfer the idea. I love that, transfer the idea into digital form. um but as you mentioned, I think it allows you to make crappy art, like, and that crappy art is usually like the best you can, like the best you can refine it, but that's just spitting it out there. It's oftentimes what ideas need to progress. Otherwise, we get stuck in the, at least I will get stuck in this cycle of perfectionism.
I
Um,
think it's funny that you mentioned Vicky, because the first we have that short film that you saw, and we have another short film that the theme is pretty similar, but a little it deviates a little bit. But what I always joke that Majo, did you took part of my short film is a scene where one of the girl, which happened to me, like had to belong. And and in that scene, like she wanted to fit in, and that meant she has to go with this group of girls that she doesn't feel like she fit in, but she's being told that's what she should be doing, right? And I think that is something beautiful that resonates, because I think we all have experienced, when we're little, which I understand. I think it's like psychologically 1 till 7 years old, or like 10, everything that we absorb stays in the subconscious. So that short film, the one before Las Niñas con las Niñas, everything I wrote it by hand. And I think there's something about it that brings your subconscious, back to, because you don't have distraction, you don't have the mail, you don't have the notification, like just sitting down and writing with, I literally, like that first version, I wrote it all in paper, like literally all paper. And then I realized, wow, it's because it allows you to stop thinking about, just like letting things flow through. Uh, and I think there's such a beauty to just let yourself write. And because a lot of times we're gonna make decisions, they're not even conscious. Like the name Lucky Twins, we couldn't even remember where it came from until we started talking about it. It's like, oh, this is where it came from, right? So I think definitely allowing yourself like the energy and all to flow, and remembering, this is something Elizabeth Gilbert, one of my favorite novel writers, said, is like we are a tool. You know, if we let go of our ego, which is the one that stopped us, from like writing all those blank pages, we get to remember that at the end of the day, we're tools. We're a tool, you know, and like this is my story, but when I make it personal, I can relate to other people and I can let my journey be relatable to other people. And it's not me. It's not like, oh, I'm great. Like, yes, it's we all are great, but at the same time, we have to remember as filmmakers, as artists, we are tools, you know, to bring those higher conscious back to the universe.
Vessels.
We're
Vessels.
vessels. We're tools. We're vessels. So, long explanation for why I think the handwriting and has been a key part of the process, and why my sister also loves to use the typewriter. I'm handwriting like you. I'm not typewriter yet, but I definitely enjoy the process a lot when I do it like that.
Yeah. And, kind of leaning off of or going off of what you were saying sort of about being like the vessel or the tool, it kind of also makes me think about the audience, sort of where is the audience? Is it from the very beginning with you? Is it sort of, when you're shooting it? Is it in post? Is it at no point? Like, where is the audience with you as during your kind of creative process? So just kind of for me as an example, the audience for me, at least I try to, doesn't mean I always make the right choices, but the audience is always with me. I think I see of course I have collaborators and that my producer, my cinematographer, things like that. But the number one collaborator for me is the audience. And because at the end of the day, I can make all of the choices that Vyky wants to make. But and at the end of the day, I want people to see it. I want people to see it more than I want to make all of the choices because I made them, you know. And now that's sort of my approach. It's kind of, it's like what they kind of say about actors sometimes. It's like, they kind of use acting to seek the validation a little bit, So yeah, I'm not ashamed to say that, what's the point in making a movie if no one's going to watch it? So I do kind of want to make some choices in that regard to kind of keep, to make it not too expansive, but to try to find different ways to draw different people, and stuff like that. They're always kind of in the back of my mind. Because also as an audience member as well, not just a filmmaker, as someone who enjoys watching films, shows, stuff like that, consuming art, you know, I hope in that sort of same way that the filmmaker is thinking of me, hoping that I'm having a good time in watching their film. So, but that sort of, I just kind of use my answer to hopefully kind of explain my question a bit, but kind of, where does the audience lie for both of you? Kind of, is there a point in which you think of them, okay, like, I mean, I would like to do this or make this move or make this choice, but I don't know if that's going to work for the audience, and sometimes when do they win? When do you win? Just different things like that.
Beginning for us, and at least with this short film and the past short film as well, is when we write, we're not really thinking of a particular audience. We know that we're humans and we all have human experiences, and at some point or some level, somebody's gonna connect. Now, with that said, we do try to ask, especially like in the script process, ask for feedback from friends or people with people from like a clean slate perspective, so to make sure that the message is understood, that but especially more in the technical aspect, not precisely in like not precisely certain like artistic choices, but more like, are we communicating the message in a way that is being understood? And for example, for the short film, we that you saw, the art of making it simple complicated, we
Title, by the way, lovely title.
very long and complicated, thank you. We actually like, we bring our audience once we shot it, and we are now in the editing process. Once we do the first, we feel like, okay, we got the film is ready. But we did ask, and this is something that my sister brilliantly thought about, like we asked a group of 10 people that are from completely different backgrounds to actually watch it and to tell us like, and from their feedback we can tell if they understood it, if they didn't, what was clear, what wasn't clear, and just being able to polish the communication, but not as much as like the art part, which I feel like our point of view, because I feel like that's kind of like what at the end of the day what the audience wants to see, your point of view and things. I will say, and I've been having, particularly for this short film, Las Niñas con las Niñas, I have been thinking now of the audience in the sense that I've experienced a lot of people that I love approaching me and telling things, saying things about their kids or their grandchildren that are very similar in a very subtle, loving way to what Thomas had told me. Like, oh, this my boy is growing up and he's, he sometimes he likes to wear dresses and sometimes he likes to do this, but when he grows up, like, I'm just gonna make sure he knows. Or a girl like a grandmother that I love telling to her little 3-year-old girl, like, like, why are you asking for things that are for boys? And just very subtle messages that they don't realize, like, they're very innocent, but I feel like with this story, and especially as you say with a feature film, maybe they will understand the ripple effect that this has on somebody. And now I'm seeing like the duty, and like, now it feels like this is why the idea was born right now. Like, I'm seeing that a lot of people don't realize the pain and like the damage it can cause in somebody by not respecting or not understanding that you have to allow somebody to be who they are, regardless of the social prejudice or whatever society says. But I would say, like, now, like, I've been thinking more about an audience of like, oh, I was thinking first like LGBT, but now I'm thinking like I need to show this to parents and grandmothers and people that have children. So that I guess that's been coming up, especially with this short film, or like becoming more present.
I want to add briefly that I used to think of audience when I used to write things, and what will happen to me is I'll completely be blocked because I'm like, no, audience won't like this. Audience will think, and I used to be a people pleaser. Now I have definitely worked on that part. So what has worked for me and for my sister too is developing this inner intuition where does it feel right? Not from an ego perspective, like does this flow? And then showing, as my sister said, for the art of making the simple complicated, when we finished the first version, I'm like, we need to make sure it's, the message is understood, not the artistic actions, but more like the overall message. And we share it with 10 different friends that we really trust. One was a cinematographer that is 40 years old from Colombia. Another one was a cousin from Mexico. Another one was another cousin, female cousin from Mexico. Like, it was like a very diverse group. And we gather the feedback and say, okay, what can we do? What could it work? What I say, I disagree with this. But I think definitely opening yourself from feedback, especially more at the end of the process, and then letting, our decisions like sink. But definitely always thinking of audience for me has always blocked me. I have to speak for where it resonates true for me. And then whoever, like, because I cannot please everybody. People are gonna love my work and people are gonna hate my work, and that's okay, and I have to come to accept that, because if I try to please everybody and all the audience, then then I'm gonna lose my voice in the process, which is exactly what happened to this character, as a matter of fact.
So that's kind of, this kind of makes me think of, I mean, it partially answers kind of something I wanted to ask. Although if you have also a different response, that's okay too. Kind of, throughout this conversation, we've been just kind of talking about what kind of works for us, what doesn't work for us, sort of, the different systems, the different writing processes and stuff like that. So, with that, while also understanding that kind of everyone can have their sort of own way of doing something and kind of get to that project end there. So generally then, what, in what way would you sort of advise or encourage or, just I suppose just give advice to filmmakers that, are just starting now? Let's say I've had this idea, I'm kind of holding on to it a bit, and I just kind of need to take that first step. What would your sort of primary advice be? And we can start with Karla.
My primary advice would be to read this book called The Artist Way by forget the name of the author. I'm gonna owe you
James
that.
Cam no, Julia
No,
Cameron.
Julia
Julia
Cameron,
Cameron.
which I think it's a book that not only works on the artistic process, but in the mind. There is a lot of artist block that for years definitely stopped me. Whether it was ego or low self-esteem or the imposter syndrome, that stopped me more than anything to create. It wasn't even financially, it wasn't even like that I didn't have the opportunities, it was the mind. So I really encourage to read this book. I think that's something that would have helped me from the beginning of my career. And the other one also will be like, yes, don't ignore audiences. That's definitely not advisable, but definitely develop this inner intuition, develop your intuition, your voice. So when you do a project, it feels good for yourself, but also show it to someone to make sure you're not just being blinded, because that could also happen. So they say the Buddhism is the middle way. I think this is it. But don't try to people please and be okay with people being like, I hate your work. And you're like, cool, that's okay. And yeah, like don't get so much hold on the results, but concentrate on loving the process and doing it where it feels right for you.
I love that. Um, I'm gonna piggyback on what my sister's saying about developing intuition. Um, the reason why we're sitting here right now is because I saw a little sign in this tea place called How. By the way, it's an amazing specialty tea space, amazing drinks. But anyways, I just saw a little sign and it says screenings, my links, and I'm like, something in my intuition told me submit your short film there, even though my mind was like, no, it's not your best work, it's not yaddy yaddy, which piggyback with my sister's advice of you have to do the inner work. If like we've I feel like we learn that in order to fix the entire like external to create externally, we have to, just do things outside, but really like the inner work is super important. But anyways, I I felt intuition and I submitted it, and that led me to the event at Links, a tiny little event, and that literally went into me meeting you and hearing about the grant. And in that moment when I met you, I've never like this short film wasn't even like written, but you kind of like inspired me, and hearing the people and like just inspired me to continue creating. And it was just one little, and now we're here sitting, we got the grant, and it's we're so grateful and excited. But it's like it was this little moment of intuition of, oh, look at this sign, maybe you should send this here. And I will say that developing that voice of learn to listen to your body when it's telling you something, even if you're afraid of, or even if you don't think it's good enough, yari, it's one of the most important things. But I also highly recommend this book we love reading, called the Creative Act and A Way of Being, by Rick Rubin. I haven't watched the documentary, but apparently there's a really good documentary about it, and that book has changed my life, as well as Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. She's an amazing, just reading and really working on yourself to liberate the blockages that are stopping you from creating. Because if you have an urge to create, you have to create. Like the creative energy, it's like if we don't listen to it, if we allow it to get stuck, it can become very destructive. That's something I learned in my journey. So I need to be constantly creating. I need to allow that energy to flow. So that would be my advice.
So when we were kind of, you know, getting started here, I'm trying not to take up too much of your time. Man, I could talk to you um, on and on. It's so many different questions are coming to me in the moment as well. Beautiful advice, by the way, and that's such a key aspect of that balance, of just, you always hear about finding your voice, and, as well as being open to feedback. And how do you balance those two things? And I remember, I feel like we watch so many things and I never remember who says what. Just, I listen to too many podcasts, but so I apologize for whoever said this and I'm not remembering who said it. But one of the greatest pieces of advice I just happened to hear by chance one day was listen to someone when they tell you something feels off, but don't listen to someone who tells you how to fix it. So they're just kind of like what you're saying, if you have a message that you're trying to communicate, and it's important to know if the audience is able to receive that message. And if they say that they're not able to receive it, that's worth listening to. If they say, well, I don't really receive your message, I need you to flop these two scenes, it's like, I mean, they could be right, but you know, they're at that point they're just kind of directing the film, and it may not align with what you're trying to do, so it's kind of like, I just always found that to be an interesting, because even if that person is right, doesn't mean that's the only way to get there, and you want to get there through your own choices, through your own intuition, through your own voice and stuff like that. So but before we had officially started this chat, I know you had mentioned that you may have wanted to ask me a question or something. So, and I had said to hold it for the conversation. So kind of before I kind of wrap things up, I just kind of wanted to throw it back to either of you if you happen to want to ask anything, or we could just sort of leave it there. It's up to you.
I did actually want to ask again. Thank you so much for all of this. We can always grab a cafecito because you live in Tallahassee, we're very close, and we'll be more than happy to.
Sure.
But I was gonna ask you, I'm just curious because you're an amazing director. We met at a screening together, and my question was like, how did you went from being a director into becoming this kind of like um this boy, like this microphone, this like, I mean, you're a grand now. You're amplifying people's voices. So how did that transition from being a director now having this amazing brand, 100 Voices of Florida? Like how did that transition happen?
So I'm a little bit too honest because it's a mixture of my selflessness side and my selfish side, or kind of balancing the ego with not the ego. And by that, I mean, so before filmmaking altogether, I was an educator for almost a decade, teaching in high school, and now I'm back in higher education as well. So, but before I decided to get my master's in film production and be a filmmaker, I was just, a typical high school teacher that you might see, maybe a little bit more tattoos than the typical. But and so I've always wanted to help people. My motivation just kind of, from growing up as well, just, sometimes it's hard to ask for help, or I was always cherished the teachers that like saw something in me and supported me. Even the teachers that we don't like, I kind of, that kind of, this is kind of where you balance the selflessness with the ego there, kind of, you know you know even I'm the type of person that even when I have a bad experience, I could have, let's say, a bad experience with the teacher. I don't think, oh, I would never want to do that thing. I kind of use that as that experience as, well, I would like to be in their shoes and maybe be better than they were to me. Most people get turned off, by certain professions or because of that. And I'm like, no, I'm going to show you how you should have treated me, even though they're never there to see how they should have. So it's
Wow.
kind of my internal, my internal conflict there. But it's a motivator. So that is why I was in the classroom. And to kind of then sort of fast forward through, becoming a filmmaker and really pursuing that, the other side of it was I know what it's like to be on the other end of applying for grants, trying to get your story seen, needing access, needing help, needing financial help. I mean, I run this grant to help filmmakers while also running my own fundraisers for my own films. You know what I mean? So it's not like this is coming from wealth or anything like that. So how do I balance that as well as I kind of do this with my creative work. I kind of felt this way with grants. I remember, and I don't know if this is one of those things that he actually said, or do you just think he did? One of my favorite filmmakers is James Cameron, and I believe the story goes that when, he saw Star Wars, he was like, I could have done that, you know, and there's a lot of ways for you to kind of take that statement, but I've been kind of using that as a way of courage to just, with my own work. Well, you know, if he can do Black Mirror, can't I do Black Mirror? If they can run a grant, can I run a grant? And just trying it, you know? So it kind of balances those two sides of me of wanting to give back, wanting to showcase Florida in some sort of way, which is my home, whether or not I'm always living in it, and needing the support because even if, like, for example, you and I are not, or both of you and I are not working together, knowing that you're working makes me want to work, so kind of always having that motivation. And then, yeah, then a little bit of arrogance and like, well, shit, why can't I, you know, why can't I help filmmakers? Of course, it would be better if I was a little bit higher on the totem pole, but who says I can't do it now? Why do I have to wait until I get some sort of, until the world agrees that have the value to help others? I don't need to wait for that. So it's a lot of
Mhm.
different, possibly a too complicated answer for your question, but it's balancing all those things and believing in myself and in others along the way. So that's that's my answer as to why a grant and why this and why now. And it feels, and the timing, kind of to add one more thing when you were talking about just following the intuition and when you saw about the submissions for the links screening, I mean, that was something that happened with the grant. It was kind of, uh, you know, coincidentally, the timing of it has worked out really well with so many grants dying and falling off the map, and Coverfly is gone, and we're in an interesting moment for filmmakers and stuff like that. So, I hope that, don't know if this will last forever, but I'm having a lot of fun while we're doing it now, and whomever we can help for now, that's all that matters. So thank you both, by the way, for
Thank you, Vicky.
Wow, I was just gonna say, Vicky, that I love that you are reshaping the idea of being a filmmaker into one of community over competition, of supporting and lifting each other up instead of like, no, you're gonna like my film is gonna be better. Like I'm just grateful you're leading by example, and that's just very beautiful to watch. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for holding this space for us, this platform and the grant and the opportunity. We really appreciate it. So, I'm happy you transitioned, you're in between, you do both.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a great ride, and I'm so glad to have you both of that as our winners, as well as to our previous winners and finalists. I mean, you know, all of you and all of those that submitted. I mean, that's where the funding comes from, and it's been great for everybody to sort of come together. And unfortunately, not everyone can win, but the fact that we are sort of submitting, but we believe in us and we believe in other storytellers as well. So that has meant a lot to me. And, you know, when we got our, you know, a couple seasons ago, when we got our, you know, we just said, oh, we'll just try this thing. And we couldn't even believe when people actually submitted. I mean, it was just like, oh, wait. You know, I thought, you know, we didn't think we were going to get one, and we got one, and we like, celebrated for a week about it. And then we were like, oh man, I guess we really have to, we really, you know, there's a need for this, and it's been growing ever since. So it's been a beautiful adventure that, you know, probably my sisters, you know, speaking of, you know, sisterly love there, I do this with my sisters, as well as our judges who assist. And, yeah, we just kind of took a chance there. And I do have a bit of a not a smooth segue, but I do have a question. It's a little bit of a personal one, so it's okay if you don't, you don't have to answer and all of that. But you had mentioned, just in general through this conversation, also kind of when you've came to Florida and stuff like that. I think you mentioned that you both found your wives in in Florida or in Miami.
Yes, we're both part of the LGBTQ community. We both have wives, and
So
we're proud.
I love that. Not married yet, but maybe one day. I'd love to be. So, but with that, my question is just because I'm just a curious person. Did you both? What was that sort of telling the one the other? Did you both kind of have this thing internally, and then you were like, I need to tell you something. Oh, wait, but me too. If you don't mind sharing about it, that would also be great to see in a scene, by the way, in a film one day, to see how that kind of unfolded or something. But I was just a little bit curious of that, if you would be open to sharing.
Absolutely, Vicky. I will say I probably knew my whole life since I was little. I just like knew it. And then when we were 19, I was like, it is the time. That's when we were about to come to United States. And I was like, I mean, we grew up in a very conservative city. Um, Beautiful, love the people, very proud to be from there, but it is very conservative. So when we're 19 and we're like, okay, we're like leaving, we kind of knew that the United States was a little more liberal back then. um and I was like, okay, I'm gonna tell my sister, like, enough is enough. And I remember, like, we were learning how to drive, yes, at 19, because driving in that city is like, it is a really roller coaster. But we were driving, and then I stopped, and I told my sister, I started crying like a baby. Like, Karla, I have something to tell you. And she's like, what? I'm like, I like women. And I started to like sob. I just felt like I guess like the suppression of like 19, 18 years of having that in there. And my sister's like, ah, okay, whatever. And I'm like, hey, like, you don't look at me. And she's like, no. And I was like, okay. But then she didn't tell me anything. And I was like, I guess she's not gay. Like, I guess she's straight, whatever. She didn't tell me anything for a whole year. And then after a year later, she tells me, and I'm like, why? So why, Karla?
So, Vicky, we will have to go for a coffee, to continue the story, because it's a whole other hour that we'll have to. But yes, I mean, I told her, she told me, and then a year later, I told her I wasn't ready, and then I told her a year later, and it ended up with both being gay. And then we came out of the closet, and then you saw the short film that we did, The Art of Making the Simple Complicated, which is very inspired. And yes, I mean, we find out just a year from each other, but we grew in such a conservative environment that it's like you kept it secret. But as soon as we were in the United States, we just kind of felt more open, I guess.
Well, that's a lovely story. I hope to see that in a moment in a film one day. I think it'd be very sort of interesting for those sort of character arcs and stuff like that.
Great idea.
And my final question, I swear, is just sort of for those listening. I can't imagine how they could not be just immediate fans of you both if they haven't heard of you already. But in case they haven't, where can they kind of stay updated with what the Lucky Twins, what y'all are doing?
Thank you so much, Vicky. We are on Instagram as Lucky Twins, literally Lucky Twins Films. Yes, Lucky Twins Films, and our website is the same, luckytwinsfilms.com. So we're also on LinkedIn. We're not on Facebook, but Instagram is our main strength. So Lucky Twins Films, they'll find us there, and they can add us and we can have a conversation. We can definitely, we're very responsive and we love to be in communication with everybody. So we love to hear from everybody if they want to reach out.
Sounds good. Alrighty. Well, thank you. I hope to meet you, Karla, one day. You got to let me know when you're in Gainesville and in town, and we can maybe coordinate something. I'm always sort of back and forth. I do owe you, I don't drink coffee, but I do owe you a coffee. Majo.
At tea. Oh, I go
We'll
often,
do
so
tea. We'll do tea. But yes, please, whenever you we have to plan something, and if you're in town, we'll continue chatting.
thank you so much, Vyky. We really appreciate this.
Alrighty, so thank you, and thank you for those that have been listening. This is again 100 Voices of Florida with our 2025 season winners, Lucky Twins, for the script Las Niñas con las Niñas. And again, 100 Voices of Florida is about uplifting filmmakers. So we hope that you are inspired to, sorry, the little emojis are cute for those that are watching us the video. And we hope that you're inspired to continue supporting and celebrating all the voices in film. And stay tuned for next season. Can't really guarantee anything right now, but we're hoping to maybe expand to documentaries, to pitches, to kind of, and there may be a 100 Voices of something else coming to a state near you, because we would love to expand and not just, help Floridians, although yes, or those with connections to Florida, as we have been, my sisters and I, Florida born and raised, but we have traveled all over this country and all over the world. So hopefully we can help others as well who may need us and need that little bit of a boost. So anyways, that's kind of all I can say for right now. Again, thank you both for being here. I'm Vyky from 100 Voices of Florida. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you, Vyky.